All right, welcome everyone. Today we are going to tackle Edmund Husserl. Now, I know his work can feel a little dense, but his project is truly one of the most ambitious in modern philosophy. So, our goal today is to demystify his phenomenology. We're going to get right to the question that I know is on a lot of your minds. How on earth can the study of our own subjective experience possibly be called a rigorous science? Well, let's find out. So here's our game plan for today. First, we'll dig into the problem Husserl was actually trying to solve. Then, we'll look at the absolute key concept he got from his teacher, Franz Brentano, this idea of intentionality. That's going to lead us straight to the method itself, the epoché, which, let's be honest, is usually the trickiest part for everyone. From there, we'll see what this weird method actually reveals, something he calls the life world. And then finally, we'll bring it all home and answer our big question: how does all this add up to a science? Okay, let's jump right in with section 1. To really get Husserl, you have to understand the crisis he saw brewing in modern science. He was a huge admirer of science, but he thought that for all its incredible power, it had a massive, glaring blind spot. And this question right here, this gets to the very heart of it. Think about it. Science is absolutely brilliant at explaining the objective world, right? We're talking atoms, forces, galaxies, the whole shebang. But it systematically ignores the one thing that makes science itself possible in the first place: our conscious experience of that world. So how do you turn the scientific lens back onto subjectivity itself? That was the mountain Husserl set out to climb. You know, physics can explain the physical causes of an event, say the force and mass that lead to a window shattering, but physics has absolutely nothing to say about the meaning of that event in our consciousness. Was it an accident? Vandalism? A sign of something? See, natural science is fantastic with physical causes, but it's totally silent on conscious meaning. Husserl argued that we needed a whole new kind of science, one that could investigate the very structures of our minds that allow a world to show up for us with meaning to begin with. So to build this new science of experience, Husserl needed a foundational principle, right? He had to figure out what the most essential defining feature of consciousness really is. And he found that crucial starting point in the work of his teacher, Kurupa. That teacher was Franz Brentano. Now, it's important to remember that Husserl went way beyond what Brentano was doing. Brentano wanted a kind of descriptive psychology. Husserl wanted a foundational science for all knowledge. But it was Brentano who gave him the master key by dusting off an old idea from medieval philosophy: intentionality. So what is intentionality? It's a simple idea, but it's incredibly profound. It's the insight that your consciousness is never just a passive empty box. It's always active, always directed towards something. It's a consciousness of. You don't just think, you think about something. You don't just hope, you hope for something. This aboutness, this directedness, isn't just some random quirk of the mind. For Husserl, this is the fundamental structure of consciousness. And if it's a structure, well, then it can be scientifically described. This table really helps make that distinction clear. On the left, you've got the actual physical birthday cake. It has objective properties, right? It weighs 3 kilos, you can eat it. That's the stuff of physics and chemistry. But over on the right, you have my consciousness of the cake. That's a mental act, not a thing. It doesn't weigh anything. You definitely can't eat my perception of the cake. And here's the kicker. Look at that last row. The physical cake isn't about anything. It just is. My perception, on the other hand, is intrinsically about the cake. That's the intentional relationship. Phenomenology doesn't care about the left column. It is the science of the right-hand column, the structure of the conscious act itself. Okay, so if consciousness is always aimed at the world, how in the world do you study consciousness itself without just getting stuck studying, well, the world? How do you separate the act of seeing from the thing being seen? This is the big methodological problem, and Husserl's solution is his most famous, and frankly his most misunderstood idea: the epoché. The method really has 3 steps. First, we have to recognize our starting point, what he calls the natural attitude. This is just our default mode, the normal, everyday, unthinking assumption that the world is just out there, existing all on its own. Step 2 is the radical move. You perform the epoché. This means you bracket or suspend your belief in the world's independent existence. You just put that belief out of play. You don't deny it. You just decide not to use it as the basis for your investigation. And once you do that, you can move to step 3, the transcendental reduction, where you can finally shift your focus from the world to the way the world is given to you in consciousness. And I really want to hammer this point home, because this is where most people get tripped up on Husserl. The epoché is not a form of skepticism. You are not denying reality or doubting that the world exists. It's simply a methodological shift in focus. Think of it like this. Imagine you're watching a play. You're not suddenly deciding the stage and actors aren't real. You're just shifting your attention away from the story of the play, and instead you're focusing on the lighting, the set design, the directing, all the things that make the play appear the way it does. The epoché is a tool that opens up the structures of experience themselves as a new field of data. I love this quote from Husserl because it really gets at the power of this shift. He says it's like going from 2D to 3D. Why? What does he mean? Well, in our normal, natural attitude, we're kind of stuck in a flat 2D world of just things. But when we perform the epoché, we gain that third dimension of depth, the conscious experience through which those things are presented to us. We don't lose the world. We actually gain access to the very structures of consciousness that make a world appear to us in the first place. Which brings us to the payoff. So you've performed the epoché. You've put the world in brackets. What's left? What new territory does this crazy method actually open up for us to investigate? It opens up what Husserl called the Lebenswelt, the life world. This is the foundational, pre-scientific world of our immediate lived experience. It's not the world of abstract, geometric space. It's the world of landscapes with paths to walk on and horizons we move towards. It's the world of practical goals and cultural meanings. It's the world that is, as he says, always already there for us, before we ever start doing any kind of science or philosophy. This life world is primordial. It's the bedrock. Every scientific theory, every abstract concept is ultimately built on this ground. A physicist's lab experiment doesn't happen in some abstract dimension. It happens on a lab bench, in a room, with people. That's the life world. It's a world overflowing with meaning, not just physical causes. And for Husserl, it's the only world we can ever truly, directly experience. And this leads to a pretty revolutionary way of thinking about science. The common view is that science pulls back a curtain to show us the real world of atoms and equations hiding behind our messy, everyday perceptions. Husserl completely flips this on its head. He says there is no world behind the curtain. There's only the life world. Science is an incredibly powerful and useful abstract description, a kind of map that describes certain features of the life world, but we should never confuse the map with the territory. Which brings us to our final section and right back to our original question. If phenomenology is all about this pre-scientific lived world, and it starts with this personal, subjective active bracketing, how can Husserl possibly claim this is a rigorous science? Okay, let's break down his argument. Husserl argues that phenomenology absolutely meets the criteria for a science. First, it has a repeatable method, the epoché and the reduction. In principle, anyone can be trained to do it. Second, it has a clear subject matter, the universal structures of conscious experience. For instance, every single conscious act has this dual structure of the act of intending, what he calls noesis, and the content that is intended, the noema. That structure is universal. Third, it's a search for universal truths or essences. We're not just describing my experience of red, but the essential structure of any possible experience of color. And finally, and this is a big one, it gives us a new way to think about objectivity. Objectivity isn't some view from nowhere. It's what remains constant across many different points of view. It's intersubjective agreement, verified by a community of investigators. So let's be crystal clear about this. Phenomenology is not anti-science. It's a foundational science. Husserl's goal was never to replace physics, but to ground it. He wanted to answer the most basic question of all. How is it even possible that a world appears to us in the first place, a world that we can then go on to measure and theorize about? He believed that by describing the essential structures of consciousness, he was providing the ultimate rational foundation for all knowledge. And that leaves us with a kind of challenge. The epoché isn't just some dusty historical concept. It's a mental exercise you can actually do. So I invite you to try it. The next time you're looking at something totally familiar, just for a moment try to suspend your automatic belief that it's just out there. Instead, shift your focus to how it's appearing to you, in the stream of your own experience. What do you notice? Because that investigation, that's the beginning of phenomenology.